I see you're going to Sacramento. That's what he said to me at the fuel pump, even though I'd never told him where I was headed. I'd been driving trucks for 11 years by that point, mostly doing long hauls between distribution centers across the western states. It was November, one of those cold, clear nights where the highway stretches out like a black ribbon, and you can see every star in the sky. I'd stopped at a truck stop just outside Winnemucca, Nevada, around 2 o'clock in the morning. The place was half empty, just a handful of rigs scattered across the lot, their running lights glowing in the darkness. I was standing at the diesel pump, watching the numbers climb on the meter, when I heard boots crunching on gravel behind me. I turned and saw him, a driver I didn't recognize, maybe in his 50s, with a gray beard and a worn baseball cap pulled low. His rig was parked at the pump behind mine, a white Freightliner with no company markings, the kind of setup you see with owner-operators. "Long night," he said, nodding toward my truck. "Yeah," I replied, keeping it brief. I've learned over the years that some drivers want to chat, and some don't. I usually fall into the latter category, especially at 2 in the morning. That's when he said it. "I see you're going to Sacramento." I looked at him more carefully. "How'd you know that?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Saw your route sheet through the window when I walked past. You left it on the passenger seat." I felt a small twist in my stomach. My truck's passenger window faced away from the pumps toward the empty stretch of parking lot. He would have had to walk around my entire rig, peer through the window with a flashlight or something to see anything on that seat. And why would he do that? "Right," I said slowly. "Well, have a safe trip." I finished fueling faster than I normally would, hung up the nozzle, and climbed back into my cab. Through my mirror, I watched him. He was still standing there by his truck, not pumping fuel, not moving, just watching me. I started my engine and pulled out of the lot, telling myself it was nothing. Truckers can be weird, lonely, socially awkward. It didn't mean anything. But 20 meters down the highway, I saw him again. His white Freightliner was sitting on the shoulder of the road. No lights on except for the running lights. I was doing 70 in the right lane, and as I passed him, I glanced over. He was parked at an angle, like he'd just pulled over in a hurry. There was no reason for it. No flat tire, no emergency flashers. He was just sitting there in the dark. And as I passed, his headlights flicked on. I watched in my side mirror as he pulled onto the highway behind me. Not speeding, not tailgating, just settling into the lane about a 4-mile back, matching my speed exactly. My hands tightened on the wheel. It could be a coincidence. Maybe he'd pulled over to check his GPS or take a phone call. Maybe he was going to Sacramento too. It's a major route. Lots of trucks head that way. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I tried testing it. I sped up to 75. He sped up. I slowed down to 60. He slowed down, always keeping that same distance like he was tethered to me. I thought about taking an exit, but this stretch of I-80 is desolate. Nothing but sagebrush and darkness for miles. The next town, with any real services, was over an hour away. If I pulled off onto some empty side road and he followed, I'd be in a worse situation than I was now. So I kept driving, keeping him in my mirrors, my heart beating faster than it should. Around 3:30, I saw a rest area sign 2 miles ahead. I decided I'd pull in, park near other trucks, maybe even go inside and find a security guard if there was one. At the very least, I'd see if he followed me in. He did. The rest area was small, just a bathroom building and a few picnic tables with space for maybe a dozen trucks. There were only 3 others parked there, all dark and silent. I pulled into a spot near the building, keeping my engine running. In my mirror, I watched the white Freightliner glide into the lot. He didn't park near the other trucks. He parked at the far end, away from the lights, facing my direction. I sat there for 5 minutes watching. He didn't get out, didn't turn off his engine, just sat there idling in the shadows. That's when I realized I'd made a mistake. I was off the highway now, in a nearly empty rest area, and he was between me and the exit. I locked my doors. I considered calling the police, but what would I say? A truck driver is parked near me. He hadn't done anything illegal. Hadn't threatened me. Hadn't even spoken to me since the fuel stop. I'd sound paranoid. I decided to leave. I put my truck in gear, pulled out of the spot, and headed toward the exit. As I passed his rig, I glanced over. He was looking right at me, not just glancing, staring. His face was lit by the glow of his dashboard, and his expression was blank, unreadable. He raised one hand in a slow wave. I drove. I got back on the highway and pushed my speed to 80, then 85. I didn't care about tickets anymore. I just wanted distance. But within minutes, I saw his headlights appear behind me again, far back at first, then slowly closing the gap. He was speeding too. My phone was in the cup holder. I thought about calling my dispatcher, my wife, someone, but what could they do? I was in the middle of nowhere, and he wasn't breaking any laws. Just driving on the same highway, just happening to stay behind me for over an hour now. I kept pushing. The road ahead was empty. Just my headlights cutting through the dark, and his headlights always there behind me, like eyes that wouldn't blink. Around 4:15, I saw another truck stop ahead, a big one, a Flying J, lit up like a beacon. I took the exit fast, my trailer swaying slightly, and pulled into the lot. It was busier here, maybe 15 or 20 trucks parked in neat rows. I found a spot near the building entrance, right under a bright overhead light, and parked. I shut off my engine and sat there, breathing hard, watching my mirrors. The white Freightliner pulled in 30 seconds later, but this time he didn't park. He drove slowly through the lot, weaving between the rows of trucks, like he was searching for something. Searching for me. I slid down in my seat, my heart pounding, watching him pass my row once, twice. On the third pass, he stopped. He stopped right next to my truck. I couldn't see his face from my angle, but I saw his passenger window roll down slowly, and then I heard it. A soft tapping on my driver's side door. 3 knocks, deliberate and calm. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Another 3 knocks, and then his voice muffled through the door. "I know you're in there." I still didn't respond. My hand hovered over my phone, ready to dial 911, but I was frozen. The knocking stopped. I heard his footsteps crunch on the pavement as he walked around the front of my truck, into my line of sight. He stood there in the glare of the overhead lights, hands in his pockets, looking up at me through the windshield. He smiled, not a threatening smile, almost friendly. And then he pulled something out of his pocket and held it up. It was a piece of paper. Even from inside my cab, I could see what it was. A printout of a route sheet. My route sheet. The one I'd had on my passenger seat at the first truck stop. He must have taken a photo of it, or reached through my window when I wasn't looking. I don't know, but he had it. He knew exactly where I was going, what stops I was making, what time I was supposed to arrive. He tapped the paper with one finger, then pointed at me, then at himself, then down the road in the direction of Sacramento. The message was clear. I'm going with you. I grabbed my phone and called 911. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The dispatcher answered, and I started talking fast. Told her where I was, described the truck, described him. She said she'd send someone, but the nearest patrol was 20 minutes out. When I looked up again, he was gone. I scanned the lot, my eyes darting between mirrors and windows. His truck was still there, parked one row over, but I couldn't see him. The driver's door was open, swaying slightly in the wind, but the cab was empty. I stayed on the line with the dispatcher, my breath coming in short gasps. She kept telling me to stay calm, stay in my truck, lock the doors. I told her they were already locked. I told her I didn't know where he went. And then I saw him. He was standing behind my trailer, just barely visible in my passenger mirror, half hidden in shadow. He wasn't moving, just standing there watching the back of my truck. He's behind me, I whispered into the phone. He's right behind my trailer. The dispatcher's voice was steady, professional. Stay where you are. Officers are 5 minutes away. But I couldn't wait. I started my engine. The rumble must have startled him, because he stepped into the light, and I saw his face clearly for the first time. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He looked almost disappointed, like I'd ruined something. I threw my truck into gear and pulled out of the spot, my trailer swinging wide, nearly clipping another rig. I didn't care. I drove toward the exit, my eyes glued to the mirrors. He just stood there, watching me leave, hands at his sides. I got back on the highway and drove until the sun came up. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I called my dispatcher and told him everything. He told me to drive straight to the Sacramento warehouse and file a report. I did. The police never found him. They searched the truck stop, reviewed the security footage, but the cameras in that section of the lot were broken. They had no clear image of his face, no license plate number for his truck. He'd vanished. I finished that route. I delivered my load. But when I got home, 3 days later, I found something in my mailbox that made my blood run cold. It was a photo, a printout, grainy and slightly blurred, taken from a distance. It showed my house, my driveway, my truck parked in front. On the back, written in neat block letters, were 4 words. See you next time. I still drive trucks. I still take the same routes. But now, every time I stop for fuel, I check my mirrors. I check my windows. I look for white Freightliners with no company markings. And sometimes late at night, on empty highways, I see one. I can never tell if it's him. If you can hear this, don't stop at the next rest area. I almost didn't catch it. The CB radio had been quiet for the last hour. Just occasional static and the distant chatter of drivers too far away to make out clearly. But that message came through clean, urgent, a woman's voice cutting through the white noise like a knife. I'd been on the road for about 6 hours, hauling a load of furniture from Portland down to Bakersfield. It was mid-January, one of those wet, miserable nights where the rain comes down so hard your wipers can barely keep up. The kind of night where you feel completely alone, even though you're on a major interstate. I picked up my receiver. This is southbound I-5 milepost 340. Who's calling? Nothing. Just static. I waited, then tried again. Repeat your last message. What rest area? Still nothing. I figured it was a prank or someone with a malfunctioning radio, so I let it go. But something about her tone stuck with me. She hadn't sounded like she was joking. She sounded scared. 20 minutes later, I saw the sign. Rest area 2 miles. My fuel was fine, but I needed to use the bathroom and maybe grab a coffee from my thermos. I'd been fighting to stay alert for the last half hour, and a short break seemed like a good idea. I took the exit. The rest area was bigger than most along this stretch. A large parking lot with spaces for about 30 trucks, a bathroom building in the center, and some vending machines under a covered walkway. But at 1 o'clock in the morning, in the pouring rain, it was nearly deserted. I counted 4 other trucks scattered across the lot, all of them dark and silent, drivers presumably sleeping in their cabs. I parked near the bathroom building, pulled on my rain jacket, and made a run for it. The rain was coming down in sheets, and by the time I got inside, I was soaked. The bathroom was empty. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Everything smelling like industrial cleaner and damp concrete. I did my business quickly, washed my hands, and headed back out. That's when I noticed the 5th truck. It hadn't been there when I pulled in. I was sure of it. But now, there was a rig parked directly across from mine. A dark blue Peterbilt with its engine off and no lights on. I couldn't see anyone in the cab, but something about it made me uneasy. The way it was angled, facing my truck, like it was watching. I climbed back into my cab, locked the doors, and sat there for a moment, rain hammering on the roof. I was being paranoid, just tired. I reached for my thermos, poured some coffee, and was about to pull out when the CB crackled to life again. "Are you at the rest area?" It was the same woman's voice. Clearer now. Closer. I grabbed the receiver. "Yeah, I'm here. Who is this?" A pause. Then, "You need to leave right now." My pulse quickened. "What are you talking about? What's going on?" "There's someone watching you." I looked around the lot, my eyes scanning every truck, every shadow. The blue Peterbilt was still there, dark and motionless. The other trucks hadn't moved. I saw no one walking around. No movement at all, except the rain. "I don't see anyone," I said into the radio. "Where are you?" "I'm in the white Kenworth, east side of the lot. I've been parked here for 2 hours. There's a man. He's been walking around, looking into trucks. He tried my door." I spotted the white Kenworth. It was parked about 100 feet away, near the edge of the lot, where the lights didn't quite reach. I couldn't see inside the cab, but I believed her. The fear in her voice was real. "Did you call the police?" I asked. "I tried. No signal out here. I think he cut the phone line to the bathroom building. There's a payphone inside, but it's dead." I checked my phone. She was right. No bars. "What does he look like?" I said tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a dark jacket and jeans. "He's not a driver. I haven't seen him get into any of these trucks. He's just walking around watching." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I scanned the lot again, more carefully this time, and then I saw him. He was standing between 2 trucks on the far side of the lot, partially hidden in shadow, just standing there, hands in his pockets, facing my direction. I couldn't make out his features in the rain and darkness, but I could see his silhouette, tall and motionless, like a statue. "I see him," I whispered into the radio. "Then go, please. I'm going to wait until more trucks show up, but you should leave now while you can." I put the receiver down and started my engine. My hands were shaking. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was probably just some hitchhiker or a homeless guy taking shelter from the rain. But the way he was standing there, not moving, not reacting to my engine starting, it didn't feel right. I put the truck in gear, and began to pull out of my spot. As I swung around toward the exit, my headlights swept across the lot, and for a brief second, they illuminated him fully. He was closer now. Much closer. He'd crossed half the lot in the few seconds I'd looked away. He was standing just 20 feet from my truck, staring directly at me through the windshield. I hit the gas. My truck lurched forward, tires splashing through puddles as I raced toward the exit. In my side mirror, I saw him start to move. Not running, but walking fast, purposeful, like he knew exactly where I was going. I didn't wait to see more. I got back on the highway and merged into the right lane. Rain pounding, heart racing. I grabbed the CB. "I'm out. Are you okay?" No response. "Hey, the woman in the white Kenworth, are you there?" Static. I tried a few more times, then gave up. Maybe she'd turned off her radio. Maybe she was hiding. I thought about circling back, but what could I do? I had no phone signal, no way to call for help. And I wasn't about to confront some guy alone in a deserted rest area in the middle of the night. I kept driving. About 10 miles down the road, I saw headlights approaching fast in my driver's side mirror. A truck closing the distance quickly. My stomach dropped. I couldn't tell the make or color in the rain, but it was coming up on me way too fast for normal highway driving. It pulled into the lane beside me. It was the blue Peterbilt. I couldn't see the driver clearly, but I saw enough. A tall figure in a dark jacket, hands on the wheel. Staring straight ahead, like I wasn't even there. He matched my speed exactly, staying right beside me, close enough that I could hear his engine over the rain. I sped up. He sped up. I slowed down. He slowed down. My mind was racing. How did he get ahead of me? I'd left first. Unless he'd been waiting on the shoulder. Engine off, lights off, just past the rest area exit, waiting for me to pass. I reached for my CB. My hands slick with sweat. If anyone can hear this, I'm southbound I-5 near milepost 360, and I'm being followed. Someone please respond. Nothing but static. The blue Peterbilt stayed beside me for another mile, then suddenly accelerated and moved ahead, cutting into my lane with inches to spare. I slammed on my brakes, my trailer fishtailing slightly on the wet pavement. He slowed down, forcing me to slow down with him. We were doing 40 now, then 35, in a 65 zone. And then his brake lights came on. He was stopping right there in the middle of the highway. I swerved into the left lane and floored it, my engine roaring as I passed him. In the split second I was alongside his cab, I looked over. The driver's seat was empty. I didn't understand. I'd seen someone in there just moments ago, but now there was no one, just an empty cab, the steering wheel turning slightly on its own as the truck rolled to a stop. I didn't slow down. I kept driving, my mind refusing to process what I'd just seen. Maybe he ducked down. Maybe he was in the sleeper. Maybe I was losing my mind. 5 miles later, I saw another rest area sign. I didn't want to stop, but my fuel gauge was dropping fast. I'd been running hard, and I needed diesel within the next 20 miles, or I'd be stranded. I took the exit, praying this rest area would be different. It wasn't. It was almost identical to the first one. Same layout, same bathroom building, and parked in the center of the lot, facing the entrance, was the blue Peterbilt. I stopped at the edge of the lot, engine idling, my breath coming in short gasps. The Peterbilt's lights were off. The cab was dark, but I knew someone was in there, watching, waiting. I grabbed my CB, my voice shaking. This is southbound I-5. If the woman in the white Kenworth can hear me, please respond. Please. The radio crackled, but it wasn't her voice that came through. It was a man's voice. Low, calm. She's not coming, but don't worry. I'll keep you company. I dropped the receiver. My whole body went cold. The driver's door of the blue Peterbilt opened. I threw my truck into reverse and backed out onto the highway, tires screaming. I didn't care about fuel anymore. I'd coast to empty if I had to. I just needed to get away. But as I merged back onto I-5, I looked in my mirror one last time. The blue Peterbilt was following me again, and this time I could see the driver clearly in the glow of my taillights. It was a woman, dark hair, pale face, the same woman from the CB radio. She raised one hand and waved. "You sure this is the right exit?" That's what my co-driver asked me as we pulled off Highway 90 somewhere in the empty stretch between Billings and Miles City, Montana. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd been trading driving shifts for the past 14 hours. We were both exhausted, running on gas station coffee and spite. GPS says there's a 24-hour truck stop here, I told him, squinting at my phone. Food, showers, the works. Marcus nodded and leaned back in the passenger seat, already half asleep. We'd been partners for about 8 months, running cross-country hauls for a logistics company out of Chicago. He was a good guy, reliable, didn't talk too much, the kind of person you want next to you when you're spending days at a time in a cab. The exit ramp curved away from the highway into darkness. No streetlights out here. Just our headlights cutting through the night and empty grassland stretching out on both sides. I followed the GPS directions, turning left onto a 2-lane road that looked like it hadn't been repaved in decades. "How far?" Marcus asked. "Says 2 miles. We drove in silence. The road was completely deserted. No other vehicles, no buildings, nothing but scrub brush and the occasional reflective marker on the shoulder. I started to feel uneasy. Most truck stops along major routes are visible from the highway, lit up like small cities. But there was nothing out here except darkness. Then I saw it. A large blue sign appeared in our headlights. Silver Creek Travel Plaza, next right. The sign looked old. The paint faded and peeling, but it was there. I felt relieved. GPS had been right after all. I took the turn onto what looked like a long access road. After about a quarter mile, the truck stop came into view. It was big. Bigger than I expected for such a remote location. A main building was a sprawling, single-story structure with a convenience store, restaurant, and what looked like a small motel attached to one side. The parking lot could easily hold 40 trucks, though right now I counted only 6 parked in various spots, all of them dark and silent. Overhead lights illuminated the fuel pumps and the area near the building entrance. Finally, Marcus muttered, sitting up, "I need actual food, not another protein bar." I pulled up to the diesel pumps and shut off the engine. The silence that followed felt heavy, oppressive. No music playing from the building. No sounds of other trucks idling. Nothing but the faint hum of the overhead lights. We climbed out. The air was cold and still, carrying a faint smell of diesel and something else I couldn't quite place. Something stale. Marcus headed toward the building while I started fueling, watching the numbers climb on the pump display. That's when I noticed something odd. The other trucks in the lot, all 6 of them, were covered in dust. Not just a light coating, but thick layers of grime and dirt, like they'd been sitting there for weeks. The tires were flat. One of them had spider webs stretched across the driver's side mirror. I looked toward the building. Marcus had already gone inside, the glass door swinging shut behind him. Through the windows, I could see fluorescent lights and rows of merchandise. But I couldn't see any people. No clerk at the counter, no other customers, no movement at all. The fuel pump clicked off. I hung up the nozzle and walked toward the building, my footsteps echoing across the empty lot. When I pulled open the door, a bell chimed, one of those old-fashioned bells on a spring that rings when you enter. The inside looked normal enough. Aisles of snacks and supplies, a coffee station against the far wall. A few tables and booths near what appeared to be a small restaurant area. But everything had that same stale quality I'd smelled outside. The merchandise on the shelves looked faded, outdated. I saw candy bars in wrappers I hadn't seen in years. Magazines with cover dates from 2019. A display of trucker hats covered in a thin layer of dust. Marcus was standing at the counter waiting. There was no one behind it. "Hello," he called out. "Anyone working here?" No response. I walked over to him. "Where's the clerk?" "I don't know. I've been standing here for 5 minutes. The lights are on. The door was unlocked, but there's nobody here." We looked at each other. The same unease I'd felt outside was growing stronger now, settling into my chest like a weight. "Maybe they're in the back," I suggested, though I didn't really believe it. Marcus walked around the counter and pushed open a door marked "Employees Only." I heard his footsteps echoing in what sounded like a large storage area. Then silence. He came back a moment later, shaking his head. Nothing. Just empty shelves and boxes. "What about the restaurant?" I said, nodding toward the dining area. We walked over. The restaurant section had a dozen booths with cracked vinyl seats and a few tables near the windows. There was a kitchen behind it, serving counter, visible through a pass-through window. The lights were on in there too, and I can see a grill, a fryer, stacks of plates, but no people. On one of the tables, I noticed something that made me stop. There were 3 plates of food sitting there, partially eaten. Eggs, bacon, toast, all of it moldy, covered in fuzzy green growth. The coffee cups next to them had evaporated to dark rings at the bottom. The silverware was rusted. "This place has been abandoned," Marcus said quietly. "Maybe for years." "Then why are the lights on?" I asked. "Why is the door unlocked?" He didn't have an answer. I pulled out my phone to check the GPS to see if maybe we'd taken a wrong turn. Ended up at some defunct truck stop that still showed on old maps. But my phone had no signal, not even one bar. "We should go," Marcus said. "This is too weird." I agreed. We turned to head back toward the entrance, and that's when I saw them. There were people sitting in the booths. I swear they hadn't been there 30 seconds ago. But now, there were 4 people scattered around the dining area, all sitting alone in separate booths, all completely still. They were dressed like truckers, flannel shirts, jeans, baseball caps, and they were all staring down at empty tables. Not eating, not drinking, not moving at all. "Excuse me," I called out. "Is this place open?" None of them looked up. None of them even twitched. Marcus grabbed my arm. "We're leaving now." We walked quickly toward the entrance, keeping our eyes on those motionless figures. As we passed the nearest booth, I got a better look at the man sitting there. His skin was gray, waxy. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. He looked like he'd been sitting there for days. We burst through the door and practically ran to our truck. I climbed into the driver's seat, hands shaking, and started the engine. Marcus was already buckling his seatbelt, his face pale. "What the hell was that?" he said. "I don't know. I don't want to know. We're getting out of here." I threw the truck into gear and pulled away from the pumps, heading toward the exit. But as we passed the other parked trucks, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Each of those abandoned trucks had someone sitting in the driver's seat. Motionless figures, barely visible in the darkness, sitting behind the wheels with their hands on their laps, staring straight ahead, waiting. I hit the gas and raced down the access road toward the highway. In my rearview mirror, I saw the truck stop receding into the darkness, the overhead lights getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. We didn't talk for the next hour. We just drove, putting as much distance between us and that place as possible. Eventually, Marcus pulled out his phone. "I have signal now," he said. "I'm going to report this." "Report what? That we stopped at a creepy truck stop? That place shouldn't exist." He said, "Those people. If they were people, something's really wrong there." He tried searching for Silver Creek Travel Plaza on his phone. Nothing came up. He tried different variations of the name, searched for truck stops in that area of Montana. Nothing matched. "It's not listed anywhere," he said. "It's like it doesn't exist." We finished that haul and got home 3 days later. I tried putting it out of my mind, chalking it up to exhaustion and imagination, but I couldn't stop thinking about those people in the booths, sitting there in the dark, waiting for something. 2 weeks later, Marcus didn't show up for our next run. I called him. No answer. I called his apartment. His roommate said Marcus had left 5 days ago. Said he was going for a drive to clear his head. He'd taken his personal truck and hadn't come back. The police got involved. They tracked his phone's last location to somewhere along Highway 90 in Montana. Then the signal went dead. They never found him. Last month, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, there was just static for a long moment. Then a voice I barely recognized. It was Marcus. He sounded distant, hollow, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. "Don't come looking for me," he said. "I'm at Silver Creek. I've been here the whole time. We're all still here." The line went dead. I've tried to find that exit again, driven that stretch of Highway 90 a dozen times, but I've never seen the turn, never seen the sign. It's like it was never there. But sometimes late at night when I'm driving through Montana, my GPS shows a new point of interest that wasn't there before. It appears for just a few seconds, then disappears. Silver Creek Travel Plaza, 2 miles. I keep driving. "We added a stop to your route." My dispatcher's voice crackled through my phone at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was already 2 hours into a run from Denver to Seattle, hauling electronics for a big retail chain. It was supposed to be a straightforward 3-day haul, with one scheduled stop in Boise. "What kind of stop?" I asked, keeping one hand on the wheel. "Small pickup in Wyoming, town called Riverside. Should only add an hour to your trip. Clients already paid for the expedited service." I didn't love the idea of an unscheduled stop, but I'd been driving for this company for 5 years and trusted them. They didn't usually spring surprises on me. I took down the address and adjusted my GPS. The detour took me off I-80 onto a series of smaller highways that wound through the empty hills of western Wyoming. The landscape out here is harsh and lonely. Just brown grass, scattered rocks, and the occasional ranch house sitting miles from anything else. The kind of place where you could disappear and nobody would notice for weeks. Riverside wasn't much of a town. Maybe 200 people. A single main street with a gas station, a diner, and a handful of houses. The address my dispatcher gave me led to a warehouse on the outskirts. A squat metal building with a gravel parking lot and no signs or markings. I pulled up and honked twice. That's the usual signal for a pickup. A man emerged from a side door. He was in his 60s, wearing coveralls and a John Deere cap, looking exactly like every other warehouse worker I'd ever dealt with. He waved me over to the loading dock. "You got room for 3 pallets?" he called out. "Yeah, I've got space." He disappeared inside and returned a few minutes later, driving a forklift. The pallets were wrapped in black plastic sheeting, secured with industrial strapping. Nothing unusual about that. Lots of shipments come wrapped for weather protection. Each pallet was maybe 4 feet square and stacked about 5 feet high. "What am I hauling?" I asked as he loaded the first one. "Machine parts," he said. "Agricultural equipment going to Seattle." I nodded. That made sense for rural Wyoming. He finished loading all 3 pallets into my trailer, secured them with straps, and had me sign a delivery form. The whole process took maybe 20 minutes. "Drive safe," he said as I climbed back into my cab. I got back on the road and thought nothing of it. Just another pickup, another delivery. The pallets were heavy, but balanced well, and my truck handled them fine. About an hour later, I stopped for fuel at a truck stop outside Rollins. While the tank was filling, I walked around to check my trailer, something I always do after loading new cargo. Make sure the straps are tight. Make sure nothing shifted. That's when I smelled it. It was faint at first, barely noticeable. A sweet rotten smell coming from inside the trailer. I opened the back doors and climbed in. The smell was stronger here, definitely coming from the direction of those 3 pallets. I walked over to them. The black plastic wrapping made it impossible to see what was inside, but the smell was unmistakable now. Something organic, something spoiling. Machine parts don't smell like that. I pulled out my knife and carefully cut a small slit in the plastic on the nearest pallet, just enough to peek inside. It was meat. Raw, dark red meat packed in plastic bags with no labels. Dozens of bags stacked together, some of them leaking. The smell hit me like a punch, and I had to step back, covering my nose. This wasn't agricultural equipment. This was meat, and it was starting to go bad. I immediately called my dispatcher, the cargo from Riverside. They told me it was machine parts. It's meat. Unmarked meat that's been sitting unrefrigerated. There was a pause. "That's not what's on the manifest. Hold on." I waited, my heart starting to pound. Something was wrong. Very wrong. You don't ship meat in a dry trailer. You don't wrap it in black plastic and call it machine parts. My dispatcher came back on the line. "I'm looking at the paperwork now. The client listed it as industrial components, non-perishable. Do you want to refuse the cargo?" "I want to know what I'm hauling," I said. "This could be some kind of illegal meat, black market beef or game. I'm not getting involved in that. I'll call the client. Stay where you are." I hung up and stood there in the parking lot, staring at my trailer. My mind was racing. What if it wasn't beef? What if it was something worse? I'd heard stories about poaching operations, about people trafficking endangered animals, about things I didn't want to think about. 20 minutes later, my dispatcher called back. "The client says there was a miscommunication. It's supposed to be refrigerated transport. They're sending someone to pick it up. You can offload it there and continue to Seattle with your original cargo." "Who's coming to get it?" "A local contractor. Should be there in 45 minutes. I waited. The truck stop was busy enough. Plenty of other drivers around. Security cameras. A clerk inside. I didn't feel unsafe. Just deeply uneasy. I kept looking at my trailer, thinking about those bags of meat sitting in there, spoiling in the heat. A white cargo van pulled up exactly 45 minutes later. Two men got out, both wearing unmarked coveralls. They didn't introduce themselves, didn't make small talk, just opened my trailer and started unloading the pallets with a hand truck. "What is this stuff?" I asked as they worked. The younger one glanced at me. "Don't worry about it. I was hauling it. I want to know what it is." The older one stopped and looked at me directly. His expression was cold, flat. "You were hauling machine parts. That's what your paperwork says. That's what you'll tell anyone who asks. It's meat. I saw it. You didn't see anything." He said you picked up 3 pallets. They were removed from your truck and you drove to Seattle. That's the story. Understand? I understood. I understood that these weren't the kind of people you argued with. They finished loading the pallets into their van and drove off without another word. I stood there shaking, partly from anger and partly from fear. I called my dispatcher again. "Those guys just threatened me," I said. "I want to know who the client is. I want to know what I was carrying. The client paid in full and the cargo's been removed. Let it go. You're still getting paid for the full route." "That's not good enough. It has to be," he said, and his tone made it clear the conversation was over. I got back on the road. I tried to let it go, but for the next 2 days, as I drove to Seattle, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About that smell, about those bags of meat, about the way those men had looked at me. When I got home, I did something stupid. I started researching. I looked up missing persons in Wyoming, unsolved cases, anything that might explain what I'd seen. I found dozens of cases. Hikers who'd vanished, ranchers who'd disappeared, tourists who'd never made it home. But nothing concrete. Nothing that connected. Then 3 weeks later, I got another call from my dispatcher. "We've got a run for you. Denver to Seattle, same route as last time." "Is there a stop in Riverside?" I asked. Silence. Then, "How did you know that?" I hung up. I quit the next day. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. I looked up that warehouse in Riverside. I used Google Maps, satellite view, everything I could find. There's no warehouse there, just empty land. The address doesn't exist. I drove there with my own truck 2 months ago just to see. I found the town, found the street, but there's nothing at that address. Just an empty lot overgrown with weeds, like nothing's been built there in decades. I know what I saw. I know where I picked up that cargo. But according to every map, every record, that building was never there. Last week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed me standing in that empty lot in Riverside, looking around confused. On the back, someone had written in neat handwriting, "Some deliveries are best forgotten. I don't drive trucks anymore. My battery died about 10 miles back." That's what she said when I pulled over. I don't usually pick up hitchhikers. Most drivers don't. But it was nearly midnight on a stretch of Highway 20 in rural Oregon, and she looked harmless enough. A woman in her 30s, wearing jeans and a fleece jacket, standing on the shoulder with her thumb out. I rolled down my passenger window. "Where are you headed, Bend?" "My car broke down and I've been trying to get a signal for an hour. I just need to get to town so I can call a tow truck." I hesitated. Bend was another 40 miles, and I was already running late on my delivery schedule. But leaving someone stranded out here in the cold felt wrong. All right, get in. She climbed into the passenger seat, bringing with her the smell of cold air and pine trees. She was carrying a small backpack and looked exhausted, like she'd been walking for a while. "Thank you so much," she said, buckling her seatbelt. "I'm Sarah." "Jake," I replied, pulling back onto the highway. "What happened to your car?" "I'm not sure. It just died. I think it might be the alternator. I was trying to make it to Bend, but it gave out in the middle of nowhere." We drove in silence for a few minutes. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with the straps of her backpack, glancing occasionally at the side mirror. I figured she was just shaken up from being stranded. Then, her phone rang. She pulled it out of her pocket and stared at the screen. The ringtone was loud in the quiet cab. Some generic melody. She didn't answer it, just stared at it until it stopped ringing. "I thought your battery died," I said. She looked at me, and for a split second I saw something in her expression that I couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe, or calculation. "It did," she said quickly. "This isn't my phone. I found it on the road near my... I was going to turn it in when I got to town." That made sense, I suppose. Except the phone rang again almost immediately. Same ringtone. She declined the call this time, her hand shaking slightly. "Someone really wants to reach whoever owns that phone," I said. "Yeah," she muttered, shoving it back into her pocket. We continued driving. The highway out here is dark and winding, cutting through dense forest, with no streetlights and very little traffic. I had my high beams on, watching for deer or elk that might wander onto the road. The phone rang a third time. Sarah pulled it out again, and this time I caught a glimpse of the screen. The caller ID said home. "Maybe you should answer it," I suggested. "Let them know you found their phone." "No," she said sharply, then softer. "I mean, I don't want to get involved. I'll just drop it off at the police station." Something about her reaction bothered me. The way she was clutching that phone, the way she kept looking out the window like she was expecting to see something. I started to wonder if I'd made a mistake picking her up. Then I saw the car. It was behind us, maybe a quarter-mile back, headlights bright in my mirrors. It had appeared suddenly, like it had been waiting on a side road and pulled out after we passed. It was closing the distance fast. "Is someone following us?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. "I don't know. Could just be another driver." But the car kept coming, getting closer and closer, until it was right on my bumper. I could see it was a dark sedan, but I couldn't make out the driver. It stayed there for about a mile, close enough that I could hear its engine over mine. Then suddenly it backed off and disappeared behind a curve. "That was strange," I muttered. Sarah didn't respond. She was staring at the phone in her hand. It had started ringing again, but this time it was a different sound, a text message notification. She opened it and I saw her face go pale. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just showed me the screen. The text message was short. "Pull over. We need to talk about what you took." My hands tightened on the wheel. "What the hell? Who sent that?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I swear I don't know." The phone rang again. This time, she answered it, her hand trembling. She didn't put it on speaker, but I could hear a man's voice on the other end, angry and insistent. "Sarah, where are you? I'm getting a ride to Bend. That's all. Please, just leave me alone. You took something that doesn't belong to you. You need to give it back. I didn't take anything. I found a phone. That's it. Don't lie to me. Pull over right now." She hung up, her whole body shaking. I glanced at her, then back at the road. "What's going on?" I asked. "Do you know that person?" "It's my ex," she said quietly. "We broke up 3 months ago, but he won't leave me alone. He keeps showing up wherever I go. I moved towns, changed my number, but he always finds me. Is he the one following us? Probably. He's obsessed. He thinks I have something of his, but I don't. I just want to disappear." I saw the car again in my mirrors. It had caught up, closing the distance fast. My heart rate spiked. "What does he think you have?" "Money. He says I took money from his apartment before I left, but I didn't. I swear I didn't take anything." The car pulled alongside us, trying to pace us. I could see the driver now, a man in his 30s, his face twisted with anger. He was gesturing at us, pointing toward the shoulder, telling us to pull over. I accelerated, and he matched my speed. We were doing 75 now, dangerously fast on this winding road. "Call 911. I told Sarah. I tried. No signal out here." The car swerved toward us, forcing me closer to the edge. I gripped the wheel harder, my knuckles white. Up ahead, I saw lights. A gas station, maybe a mile away. "Hold on," I said. I pushed the accelerator to the floor. My truck wasn't fast, but it had weight and momentum. The car fell back slightly as we approached the gas station. I took the turn into the lot hard, tires squealing, and pulled up right in front of the building, where there were security cameras and bright lights. The car drove past, slowing, but not stopping. The driver stared at us as he went by. His face illuminated for just a moment. Then he was gone, disappearing down the highway. Sarah was crying now, her whole body trembling. "Thank you. Thank you for not pulling over." We sat there for a long moment, both of us breathing hard. Then I walked into the gas station and asked the clerk to call the police. When they arrived 20 minutes later, I told them everything. The phone calls, the text messages, the car following us. They took our statements. Sarah gave them her ex's name and description. The officers said they'd patrol the area and reach out to him for questioning. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" one officer asked Sarah. "I have a friend in Ben. I can stay with her. We'll follow you there. Make sure you arrive safely." I watched the police car escort Sarah's borrowed taxi into the night. She'd left the found phone with the officers as evidence. Before she got in the taxi, she'd turned to me one more time. "I'm sorry I got you involved in this," she said. "It's okay. Just stay safe." She nodded and left. I got back on the road, feeling shaken, but relieved it was over. I drove the rest of the way to my delivery point without incident, trying to put the whole thing out of my mind. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a phone. The same phone Sarah had been carrying that night. There was a note with it, handwritten. "Thank you for your help. The police caught him. I thought you should know this phone was never lost. I stole it from him because it had evidence of him stalking other women. He's going to prison now because of what was on here. You saved my life by not pulling over." Sarah. I felt a wave of relief. She was safe. He was caught. It was over. Then I made the mistake of turning on the phone. The battery was dead. So I charged it. When it powered up, I looked through the photo gallery, curious about what kind of evidence had been on there. What I found made my blood run cold. There were hundreds of photos, different women, all taken from a distance, through windows, in parking lots, at gas stations, and at the bottom of each photo was a date and location stamp. I scrolled through them, my hands shaking, until I found what I was afraid I'd find. There was a photo of my truck taken at a rest stop 2 states away, 4 months before I'd ever picked up Sarah. I was visible through the driver's side window, filling out paperwork. Below it was a caption: potential transport. Verify route and schedule. I dropped the phone. Sarah had never been hitchhiking by accident. She'd been following me, and now she had my address. All commercial vehicles must stop. I saw the sign a mile before the way station lit up against the darkness of I-40 in northern Arizona. It was just past 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd been driving for 9 hours straight, hauling furniture from Phoenix to Albuquerque. My logbook said I had 3 more hours before I had to take a mandatory rest, and I was planning to push through to the New Mexico border. Way stations are routine. You pull in, roll across the scales, and if your weight checks out, they wave you through. The whole process usually takes 5 minutes. But this one felt different from the moment I took the exit. The facility was small, just a single scale lane and a small office building with a few parking spots. There were no other trucks around, which was unusual. Even at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd typically see but the lot was completely empty, except for a single patrol car parked near the office. I pulled onto the scale and waited for the light to turn green, signaling I could proceed. Instead, a red light flashed and a speaker crackled to life. Driver, please pull forward and park in Bay 3. Routine inspection. I sighed. Random inspections were part of the job, but they were time-consuming and annoying, especially when you were trying to make a schedule. I pulled into Bay 3, as instructed, and shut off my engine. A man in a uniform emerged from the office. He was in his 40s, stocky, with a clipboard in one hand and a flashlight in the other. He walked around my truck slowly, checking the tires, the lights, making notes on his clipboard. "License and registration," he said when he reached my window. I handed them over. He studied them for longer than seemed necessary, comparing my face to my license photo multiple times. "Step out of the vehicle, please." "Is there a problem?" I asked. "Just routine, step out." I climbed down and he led me to the back of my trailer. He unlocked the doors and swung them open, shining his flashlight inside. "What are you hauling?" "Furniture. It's all on the manifest." He climbed into the trailer and started moving things around, pushing aside wrapped sofas and tables, checking behind boxes. He was being more thorough than any inspection I'd ever had, and it was making me uneasy. "You haul this route often?" he asked from inside the trailer. "Once or twice a month." "Why?" "Just wondering." He climbed back out and closed the doors. "Come inside the office. I need to verify some paperwork." I followed him into the building. The office was small and outdated. Old tile floors, flickering fluorescent lights, a metal desk with a computer that looked like it was from the 90s. The walls were covered with safety posters and DOT regulations. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair in front of the desk. I sat down while he went behind the desk and started typing on the computer. The keyboard made loud clacking sounds with each keystroke. He kept glancing at me, then back at the screen like he was comparing something. "How long you been driving?" he asked without looking up. 12 years. Ever have any violations? Accidents?" "No. Clean record?" He nodded, but didn't seem satisfied. He picked up a desk phone and dialed a number. It rang several times before someone answered. "Yeah, it's me. he said into the phone. "I've got a driver here. Arizona plates, hauling furniture. Can you run a check?" He read off my license plate number, then waited, listening. I was getting more uncomfortable by the second. Something about this whole situation felt wrong. The way he was acting, the questions he was asking. It didn't feel like a normal inspection. "Understood," he said finally, and hung up. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "You're going to need to wait here for a bit." "Wait for what?" "My supervisor wants to ask you some questions. He'll be here in about 20 minutes. "About what?" "My paperwork's in order. My truck passed inspection." "What's going on?" "Just sit tight." He walked to the door and stepped outside, leaving me alone in the office. Through the window, I could see him standing by his patrol car, talking on his cell phone. He kept looking back at the building, at me. I pulled out my own phone to call my dispatcher, but there was no signal. I tried walking to different parts of the office, holding my phone up, but I couldn't get even one bar. It was like the building was blocking the signal somehow. I went to the door and tried the handle. It was locked. My heart started pounding. I was locked in. Why was I locked in? I banged on the door. "Hey, what's going on? Why is this door locked?" The DOT officer looked over at me, but didn't move. He just went back to his phone conversation. I looked around the office for another exit. There was a back door near the bathroom, but when I tried it, it was locked too. The windows were the kind that didn't open, just single panes of glass with metal frames. I was trapped. I went back to the front window and watched the officer. He'd finished his call and was now sitting in his patrol car, just waiting. Every few seconds he'd glance at the office, making sure I was still there. 20 minutes passed, then 30. No supervisor showed up. The officer just sat in his car, occasionally checking his phone, occasionally looking at me. I tried the door again, still locked. "Let me out," I shouted, pounding on the glass. "You can't keep me here." He got out of his car and walked to the door. He didn't unlock it, just stood on the other side, looking at me through the window. "You need to calm down," he said, his voice muffled through the glass. "I am calm. I want to know why you locked me in here. This isn't legal. It's for your own safety." "My safety? What are you talking about?" He didn't answer. He just walked back to his car. I felt panic rising in my chest. This wasn't a normal inspection. This wasn't normal anything. I thought about breaking the window, but then what? He had a gun. Presumably, I'd be assaulting a law enforcement officer. I'd end up in jail. So I waited. Another hour passed. The sun started to come up, pale light spreading across the desert. And finally, another vehicle pulled into the way station. A white sedan with government plates. Two men in suits got out. They spoke with the DOT officer for a few minutes, all of them glancing at the office building, at me. Then they walked over, and the officer unlocked the door. "Mr. Cortez," one of the suited men said. He was tall in his 50s, with gray hair and a badge clipped to his belt. "FBI." "Yes, what's going on?" "I'm Special Agent Morrison. This is Agent Chen. We need to ask you some questions about your route." "What about my route? When was the last time you drove from Phoenix to Albuquerque?" 2 weeks ago. "Why? And did you stop at this way station that night?" I tried to remember. "I think so. I stop here pretty regularly." Morrison and Chen exchanged a look. Morrison pulled out a folder and opened it. Inside was a photograph. He held it up so I could see. It was a picture of my truck. Same company logo, same trailer number. But the photo was taken at night, and there was something in the background that made my stomach drop. It was a rest area, not a way station. And there were police cars everywhere, their lights flashing red and blue. Crime scene tape. This was taken 3 weeks ago. Morrison said about an hour after you passed through this way station. Do you remember stopping at the rest area near milepost 287? No, I didn't stop there. Are you sure? Yes, I drove straight through. I didn't stop until I got to Albuquerque. Morrison studied my face. A woman was abducted from that rest area. Someone grabbed her out of the bathroom and forced her into a truck. A witness got a partial plate. It matched yours. I felt like I'd been punched. That wasn't me. I didn't stop there. I didn't abduct anyone. The witness described a truck that looked exactly like yours. Same company, same color scheme. There are dozens of trucks that look like mine. We're a big company. Chen spoke up for the first time. We know. We've been tracking your company's trucks for the past 3 weeks. You're the third driver we've pulled in for questioning. Did you find her? I asked. The woman who was taken. Morrison closed the folder. No. They questioned me for another 2 hours. Where I'd been that night. What time I'd passed through. Whether I'd seen anything unusual. I answered everything truthfully. And eventually they seemed to believe me. You're free to go, Morrison said finally, but we'll need you to stay available. We might have follow-up questions. I walked out of that office in a daze. The DOT officer was gone, his patrol car no longer in the lot. It was just Morrison and Chen and me. I climbed into my truck and started the engine, my hands still shaking. As I pulled out of the way station, I looked in my rearview mirror. Morrison and Chen were standing by their sedan, watching me drive away. I never found out what happened to that woman. I never heard from the FBI again. But here's what keeps me up at night. 2 months later, I was going through old receipts for my tax records, and I found a fuel receipt from that night, 3 weeks before my interrogation. The timestamp showed I'd stopped for fuel at 11:47 p.m. at a truck stop 3 miles from that rest area. I don't remember stopping there. I don't remember stopping at all. That guy's been copying me for 3 hours. I said it out loud to myself. Something I do on long hauls when the isolation starts getting to me. But this time, I meant it. There was another truck matching my every move, and it was starting to freak me out. I was hauling auto parts from Detroit to Nashville, a route I'd driven maybe 50 times. It was early December, cold and overcast, the kind of day where the gray sky blends into the gray highway and everything feels monotonous and endless. The truck appeared behind me around Toledo, a red Peterbilt, newer model with a white trailer. Nothing unusual about it at first, just another driver heading south on I-75. But after an hour, I started noticing a pattern. Whenever I changed lanes, he changed lanes. When I sped up to pass slower traffic, he sped up. When I moved back to the right lane, he moved back. Always staying about 3 or 4 car lengths behind me. Close enough to be noticeable, but not close enough to be tailgating. I tried testing it. I slowed down to 60 and he slowed down. I accelerated to 75 and he matched my speed exactly. When I took an exit for a rest stop near Cincinnati, he took it too. The rest stop was busy, at least a dozen trucks parked in the lot. I pulled into a spot near the building and watched my mirrors. The red Peterbilt drove slowly through the lot, passing several open spaces before parking directly across from me, nose tones, about 30 feet away. I sat there for a moment, studying him through my windshield. I could see a figure in the driver's seat, but the angle and the glare on his windshield made it impossible to see details. Just a dark shape. I got out and walked toward the building. Behind me, I heard a door open and close. I glanced back. The other driver had gotten out too. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and jeans, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He was following me at the same distance he'd been keeping on the highway. Not close, but close enough. I went inside, used the bathroom, grabbed a coffee. When I came back out, he was standing by my truck. Not doing anything threatening, just standing there, looking at my trailer, his hands in his pockets. When he saw me approaching, he nodded. "Nice rig," he said. "Thanks," I replied, cautious. "Can I help you with something?" "Just admiring it. We've got the same setup. Same company, same load, same route." He gestured to his trailer. Funny coincidence, right? I looked at his trailer more closely. He was right. It had the same company logo as mine, the same model trailer, but I'd never seen this guy before, and I knew most of the drivers in our fleet. "You work for Midwest Freight?" I asked. "Started last month, name's David." He extended his hand. I shook it, but something felt off. His grip was too firm, too long, and his eyes, I finally got a good look at his face, were completely blank. No warmth, no emotion, like he was looking through me instead of at me. "I should get back on the road," I said, pulling my hand away. "Me too. See you out there." He smiled, but it didn't reach those empty eyes. I climbed into my truck and pulled out of the rest stop faster than I normally would. In my mirrors, I watched him get into his rig. He didn't start his engine right away, just sat there watching me leave. Back on the highway, I tried to put some distance between us. I pushed 7,880, weaving through traffic. For about 20 minutes, I didn't see him. I thought maybe I'd lost him. Or maybe he'd decided to stop mirroring me. Then he appeared again, sliding into the lane behind me, matching my speed. My hands tightened on the wheel. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. This was deliberate. He was following me. I grabbed my CB radio. "This is southbound I-75, milepost 168. Anyone else out here? From Midwest Freight?" Static. Then a response. "This is Midwest 447. What's up? You know a driver named David? Red Peterbilt, white trailer." Negative. Don't know anyone by that name. Why? He said he just started with the company. Said, "We're hauling the same route. Might be a contractor. We've got a few newbies this month." You having trouble with him? No. Just, he's been following me for hours. It's weird. Want me to call dispatch? I thought about it. What would I even say? A driver's been following me, but he hasn't done anything wrong. It sounded paranoid. No, it's fine. Thanks. I drove in silence for another hour. He stayed behind me the entire time, never varying his distance, never passing, never falling back. Just there, constant and unwavering. Like a shadow I couldn't shake. When I stopped for fuel outside Lexington, he stopped too. Same station, different pump. I watched him through my window as he fueled up. He kept glancing at me, that same empty expression on his face. I went inside to pay, and he followed me in. Not right behind me. He kept his distance, but he was there. When I stood in line, he stood in line. When I bought a sandwich, he bought a sandwich. When I walked back to my truck, he walked back to his. It was like looking in a mirror. I called my dispatcher. I need to report something. There's another driver who's been following me since Toledo. He says he works for us, but something's not right about him. What's his truck number? I realized I'd never checked. Hold on. I walked closer to his truck, trying to see the number painted on the door. There wasn't one. The door was blank. No truck number. No DOT number. Nothing. Just the company logo. There's no identification on his truck, I said into the phone. That's not possible. Every truck has to have a number. Are you sure it's one of ours? The logo's right. The trailer looks identical to mine. But there's no number. Where are you? Lexington, Kentucky, Route 75 South. I'm going to make some calls. In the meantime, if he keeps following you, get to a police station. Don't let him corner you somewhere isolated. I hung up and got back in my truck. My heart was pounding now. I pulled out of the fuel station and merged back onto the highway, checking my mirrors constantly. He was right behind me. The sun was setting, the sky turning dark orange and purple. I had maybe 2 more hours until I reached Nashville, but those 2 hours suddenly felt very long. I tried everything I could think of to lose him. I took exits and got right back on. I switched lanes aggressively. I slowed down, sped up, even pulled onto the shoulder briefly, like I was having mechanical trouble. He did everything I did. It was fully dark now, just my headlights and his headlights cutting through the night. There were fewer cars on the road, and I was starting to feel genuinely afraid. My phone rang. It was my dispatcher. I checked with every branch. We don't have a red Peterbilt in our fleet. Never have. And we definitely don't have anyone named David who started last month. Then who is he? I don't know, but you need to get off the highway. Find a busy truck stop or a police station. I'm calling local police right now. I saw a sign, truck stop, next exit. I took it. Pulling into a large, well-lit facility, with at least 30 trucks parked, I found a spot right under a light pole, near the main building, where there were people walking around. The red Peterbilt followed me into the lot. But instead of parking, it drove slowly past me, then circled around and parked at the far end in the darkest corner, facing my direction. I stayed in my truck, doors locked, engine running. I called 911. I need police. I'm at the Flying J off exit 98. Someone's been following me for hours. I don't know what they want. The operator took my information and said a unit was on the way. It would be about 15 minutes. I watched the red Peterbilt. The driver hadn't gotten out, just sitting there in the dark, engine idling. 10 minutes passed. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Another truck pulled into the lot. A red Peterbilt with a white trailer. Same model, same configuration. It parked right next to the first one. Then another and another. Within 5 minutes, there were 6 identical red Peterbilts parked in that dark corner, all facing me, all with their engines running. The police arrived, 2 officers in a patrol car. I met them outside and explained everything. They walked over to the red trucks with their flashlights. All 6 cabs were empty. The officers searched the area, but found no one. They checked the trailers, all locked, all empty according to the weight. They ran the plates, but the trucks weren't registered to anyone. No VINs, no documentation, nothing. We'll file a report, one officer said, but there's nothing we can charge anyone with. The trucks are unoccupied. But they followed me. They copied everything I did. You said the driver's name was David. That's what he told me. Can you describe him? I tried, but I realized I couldn't. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap. I couldn't remember his face clearly, just those empty eyes. The officers left. I sat in my truck for another hour, watching those 6 identical trucks. None of them moved. Finally, I worked up the courage to finish my route. I pulled out of the lot and got back on the highway. All 6 trucks started their engines and followed me. They're still behind me right now. all 6 of them keeping perfect distance, never passing, never leaving. I'm typing this at another truck stop, my hands shaking. I called my dispatcher again, but he said their system shows only 1 truck on my route tonight. Mine. According to their GPS, there's nothing behind me at all. Don't park in the back section. The attendant said it casually as I paid for my fuel, like he was giving me directions to the bathroom. It was 11 at night, and I just pulled into a truck stop outside Little Rock, exhausted after 13 hours on the road. Why not? I asked. He shrugged. Just don't park up front near the building. I was too tired to press him for details. I took my receipt and walked back to my truck, planning to grab a few hours of sleep before finishing the last stretch to Memphis. The front section of the lot was packed. At least 20 trucks crammed together, engines idling, generators humming. The back section, past a row of trees and a broken streetlight, was completely empty. I don't like parking in crowded areas. Too much noise, too many people walking around at all hours. So, despite the attendant's warning, I drove to the back section and found a spot far from everyone else. Backing my trailer against a fence line, I set my alarm for 6 hours, locked my doors, and climbed into the sleeper berth. Within minutes, I was out. I don't know what woke me. Maybe a sound, maybe just instinct. But when I opened my eyes, my phone said it was 2:47 in the morning, and something felt wrong. The truck was silent, except for my breathing. I hadn't left the engine running, so there was no rumble of the diesel, no vibration through the cab, just stillness. Then I heard it. Footsteps on gravel, slow and deliberate, circling my truck. I stayed perfectly still, listening. The footsteps stopped near my driver's side door. I heard breathing, close enough that whoever it was had to be standing right next to my window. Then they tried the door handle. It didn't open. I'd locked it, but the handle rattled as they tested it. Once, twice. My heart was hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. The footsteps moved to the passenger side. The handle rattled there, too. Then they walked around to the back of my trailer, and I heard something scraping against the metal, like someone running their hand along the side. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but I had no signal. The truck stop Wi-Fi didn't reach back here, and my cellular service was dead. I was completely cut off. The footsteps came back to the driver's side and stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then I heard a voice, low and rough. "I know you're in there." I didn't respond. Didn't move. Barely breathed. "You shouldn't have parked back here." The footsteps moved away, fading into the distance. I waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, my whole body tense and ready to start the engine and drive. When I didn't hear anything else, I carefully climbed into the driver's seat and looked out the windows. The back section of the lot was still empty, except for my truck. The street light was out, so everything was dark, lit only by the distant glow from the main building. I couldn't see anyone. I started my engine, the sound deafening in the silence, and pulled out of the spot. As I drove toward the front section, my headlights swept across something that made me hit the brakes. There were scratches on the pavement, long dragging marks, like something heavy had been pulled across the asphalt. They led from where I'd been parked toward a maintenance shed at the far edge of the property. I should have left right then. Should have driven straight to the highway and never looked back. But something made me pull up next to the shed and shine my headlights on it. The door was slightly open. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, staring at that dark gap. Every instinct told me to drive away, but I thought about the attendant's warning. about those scratches on the pavement, about the voice outside my truck. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed down from the cab. The shed was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet, with a corrugated metal roof and walls. The door hung crooked on its hinges. I pushed it open wider and shined my light inside. It was mostly empty. Some old tools, a rusted lawnmower, stacks of wooden pallets. But against the back wall, I saw something that made my stomach turn. There was a sleeping bag laid out on the floor. Next to it were food wrappers, empty water bottles, a camping lantern. Someone was living in here. On the wall above the sleeping bag, someone had scratched words into the metal with something sharp. Watching, waiting, taking. I backed out of the shed and walked quickly to my truck. As I climbed in, I saw movement in my side mirror. A figure emerged from behind the maintenance shed, walking slowly toward my truck. I locked the doors and shifted into gear. The figure kept coming, not running, but not stopping either, moving with a strange limping gait. In my headlights, I caught a glimpse of a face. Male, maybe 40, with a beard and hollow eyes that reflected the light like an animal's. I drove toward the front section and parked under the brightest light I could find, right next to the building entrance. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone. I had signal here and called the truck stop's main number. "There's someone living in your maintenance shed." I told the attendant who answered. He tried to get into my truck. "You need to call the police." "Are you the driver who parked in the back section?" "Yes." There was a long pause. "I told you not to park back there." "I know, but someone needs to. We call the police every week. They remove him, and he comes back. We've trespassed him a dozen times. There's nothing else we can do. He threatened me. He's dangerous." "Then you should have parked up front, like I said." The attendant hung up. I sat there in my truck, too wired to sleep, watching the back section through my mirrors. I could see the maintenance shed in the distance, barely visible in the darkness. The door was still open, swaying slightly in the wind. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, I saw headlights pull into the back section. Another truck, a white Freightliner, backing into a spot near where I'd been parked. The driver shut off his lights and his engine. Through my binoculars, I could see him climbing into his sleeper berth. I should have warned him, should have walked over there, or called the truck stop again. But I was afraid to leave my truck, afraid to draw attention to myself. So I just watched. 20 minutes later, I saw the figure emerge from the shed again. The same limping walk, the same deliberate approach. He circled the white Freightliner just like he'd circled mine, testing the doors, moving around the trailer. Then he did something I didn't expect. He pulled out a phone and made a call. I saw the glow of the screen in his hand, saw him raise it to his ear. He talked for maybe 30 seconds, then put the phone away. 5 minutes later, a van pulled into the back section. No headlights, just rolling slowly through the darkness. It parked next to the white Freightliner and 3 men got out. They worked quickly and quietly. One of them did something to the trailer door. I couldn't see exactly what, and it swung open. They climbed inside and started unloading boxes, carrying them to the van. The whole operation took maybe 10 minutes. When they were done, they closed the trailer door, got back in the van, and drove away. The figure from the shed limped back to his hiding spot. The driver of the white Freightliner never woke up, never even knew he'd been robbed. I sat there until sunrise, too scared to sleep, too shocked by what I'd seen. When the sun came up and other drivers started moving around, I finally felt safe enough to leave. I reported what I saw to the police from the road. They took my statement, but didn't seem surprised. Apparently, that truck stop had been a target for organized theft rings for years. The guy in the shed was a lookout, identifying trucks parked in isolated spots, signaling his crew when drivers were asleep. The police asked if I could identify the van or the men. I couldn't. It had been too dark. They asked if I'd gotten the license plate of the white Freightliner so they could contact the driver. I hadn't thought to check. I finished my route to Memphis and tried to put it behind me. But something about that night stuck with me. The scratches on the pavement, the words on the wall, the way that figure had moved, patient and methodical, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. 3 weeks later, I was hauling through Arkansas again and stopped at a different truck stop, about 50 miles from the first one. While I was inside getting coffee, I overheard two drivers talking. Did you hear about that driver they found in Little Rock? Been dead in his truck for 3 days before anyone checked on him. What happened? Don't know. Police said no signs of violence, but his trailer had been cleaned out. Whole load gone. Which truck stop? I already knew the answer before he said it. I don't drive through Arkansas anymore if I can help it. And when I do, I never park in back sections, no matter how crowded the front is. But sometimes late at night, when I'm trying to sleep in my cab, I hear footsteps on gravel, and I wonder if he followed me. This is not a test. The voice came through my CB radio at 3 o'clock in the morning, cutting through the static with mechanical precision. I'd been driving through rural Kansas for the past 6 hours, hauling grain from Wichita to Denver, and the radio had been silent the entire time. Most drivers were asleep at this hour. All drivers on Highway 70 westbound, between miles 180 and 220, are advised to exit immediately. Repeat, exit the highway immediately and seek shelter. I glanced at my GPS. I was at milepost 195, right in the middle of the warning zone. I grabbed my CB receiver. This is westbound 70, milepost 195. Can you clarify that last message? What's the emergency? Static. Then the same voice, identical inflection, same mechanical tone. All drivers on Highway 70 westbound between miles 180 and 220 are advised to exit immediately. Exit the highway immediately and seek shelter. I looked around. The highway was completely empty. No other vehicles in either direction. Just my headlights cutting through the darkness and flat farmland stretching out on both sides. The sky was clear. No sign of weather. No emergency vehicles. No road closures. Nothing that would explain the warning. I switched to Channel 19, the main trucker channel. Anyone else hearing this emergency broadcast? Westbound 70 in Kansas? No response. I tried my phone, thinking I'd check weather alerts or news. No signal. I was in one of those dead zones where cell service just doesn't exist for miles. The voice came through again. This is not a test. All drivers on Highway 70 westbound between miles 180 and 220 are advised to exit immediately. I saw a sign ahead. Exit 197, 1 mile. Some small town I'd never heard of. Probably just a gas station and a few houses. I didn't like the idea of getting off the highway in the middle of nowhere based on a mysterious CB message. But something about that voice unsettled me. The way it repeated exactly the same way, word for word, like a recording. I took the exit. The off-ramp curved into darkness, and at the bottom, there was a single intersection with a flashing yellow light. No gas station, no buildings, just a two-lane road disappearing into farmland. A wooden sign pointed left. Plain view, 3 miles. I turned left and drove slowly, scanning for anywhere I could park safely. The road was narrow and poorly maintained, with no shoulder and drainage ditches on both sides. After about a mile, I saw lights ahead. A small cluster of buildings that must have been plain view. It wasn't much. A dozen houses, a church, an old grain elevator, and what looked like a closed-down general store. The only light came from a few porch lamps and one street light at the main intersection. I pulled over near the church and shut off my engine. The silence was immediate and oppressive. No wind, no crickets, nothing. Just the ticking of my engine as it cooled and the sound of my own breathing. I tried my phone again. Still no signal. The CB crackled to life. "You have exited the highway. Stay in your vehicle. Do not leave your vehicle under any circumstances." My heart rate spiked. Who is this? What's going on? Stay in your vehicle. Help is coming. Help for what? What's the emergency? No response, just static. I locked my doors and sat there, trying to make sense of it. Was there a chemical spill? A dangerous fugitive in the area? Some kind of military exercise? But why wouldn't they use official channels? Why just a CB broadcast? I noticed something then. The houses, none of them had cars in the driveways. No vehicles parked on the street. In a town this small in the middle of Kansas, everyone should have at least one car or truck. But I couldn't see a single vehicle anywhere. The street light flickered. I watched it pulse on and off several times before going dark completely. Now, the only light came from those scattered porch lamps, casting weak yellow pools in the darkness. Movement caught my eye. Someone was standing on the porch of the nearest house, about 50 feet away. Just standing there, facing my direction. I couldn't make out any features, just a dark silhouette. Then another figure appeared on a different porch, and another. Within a minute, there were people standing on every porch in town, all of them motionless, all of them facing my truck. The CB crackled. "Do not leave your vehicle. There are people out there," I said into the receiver, my voice shaking. "What do they want?" "Do not acknowledge them. Do not make eye contact. Help is coming." The figures started walking toward my truck, slowly, in unison, like they were synchronized. They moved down the porch steps and into the street, converging on my position from multiple directions. I started my engine. The sound seemed deafening in the silence. The figures stopped moving, all of them turning their heads toward the sound. "Do not start your engine," the voice on the CB said. "Too late. I'm getting out of here. If you leave the designated area, we cannot guarantee your safety." I didn't care. I threw the truck into gear and pulled away from the church, swinging wide to avoid the figures in the street. They didn't try to stop me, didn't run or chase. They just stood there watching me leave. I drove back toward the highway as fast as I dared on that narrow road. My hands gripping the wheel so tight. My knuckles were white. In my mirrors, I could see the town receding into the darkness. Those figures still standing in the street, motionless. I reached the intersection and turned right back toward the on-ramp. My headlights swept across something that made me slam on the brakes. There were trucks parked along the side of the road. 5 or 6 of them, big rigs like mine, pulled over into the grass at odd angles like they'd stopped in a hurry. All of them were dark, no lights, no engines running. I grabbed my spotlight and shined it on the nearest truck. The driver's door was open, hanging loose. The cab was empty. I checked the others. All the same, doors open, cabs empty, like the drivers had just abandoned them. The CB came to life again, but this time it was different. Multiple voices overlapping, all saying the same thing. Stay in your vehicle. Do not leave your vehicle. Help is coming. They weren't recordings. I could hear the subtle differences, the slight variations in timing and inflection. These were real people, dozens of them, all repeating the same message over and over. I dropped the spotlight and accelerated toward the highway, my trailer swaying as I pushed too hard around the curve. I got back on the westbound ramp and merged onto Highway 70, my heart pounding. The highway was still empty. No other vehicles, no signs of any emergency, just darkness and that long stretch of asphalt disappearing into the night. I drove for 20 minutes before I saw another truck coming toward me in the eastbound lanes. I flashed my lights at him, trying to get his attention, but he just drove past without slowing down. My CB had gone silent. No more warnings, no more voices. I tried calling out a few times, but got no response. Around dawn, I stopped at a truck stop near the Colorado border. I told the clerk about the emergency broadcast, about the town with the people standing on porches, about the abandoned trucks. He looked at me like I was crazy. There's no town called Plainview on Highway 70, he said. And there haven't been any emergency broadcasts in Kansas tonight. I've been monitoring the scanner all shift. I pulled out my phone and tried to search for the town. He was right. No results. I checked Google Maps, zoomed in on the area where I'd exited. The exit was there, but according to the map, that side road just led to empty farmland. No town, no buildings, nothing. Pre-PP. I drove the rest of the way to Denver in a daze. When I got there, I filed a report with my company about the incident. They checked with Kansas Highway Patrol. No emergency broadcasts had been issued. No reports of abandoned trucks. No record of any incident in that area. I thought maybe I'd hallucinated it, some kind of sleep deprivation episode. But when I got back to my truck, I found something that made my blood run cold. There was mud on my tires and undercarriage. Fresh mud, the kind you only get from driving on unpaved roads. And stuck in my door handle was a small piece of paper folded once. I unfolded it with shaking hands. Written in neat handwriting were 5 words. Thank you for not stopping. I still drive Highway 70 sometimes. I pass that stretch between mileposts 180 and 220 in daylight now, and I've looked for that exit dozens of times. I've never found it again. But 3 weeks ago, I heard from another driver who'd gotten the same CB warning, same message, same voice, same instructions to exit and seek shelter. He took the exit too. I tried calling him back yesterday to ask what he found. His phone's been disconnected. Road closed ahead. Follow detour. The electronic sign appeared in my headlights without warning, its orange letters flashing against the darkness. I was driving through northern Maine on Route 11, hauling lumber to a distribution center in Caribou. It was just past midnight, and I hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. I slowed down as I approached the supposed closure. There were orange cones funneling traffic onto a side road, and another sign with an arrow pointing right. But I didn't see any construction equipment. No workers, no explanation for why the road would be closed at this hour. I grabbed my CB radio. Anyone know about construction on Route 11 near Ashland? I'm being detoured. Static. The CB had been quiet all night. Not unusual in this remote area. But the silence felt heavier now. I tried my phone. No signal. Which wasn't surprising. Cell coverage up here was spotty at best. I'd been without service for the last 40 minutes. The detour route was a narrow, two-lane road that curved into dense forest. My GPS showed it as a county road, unpaved according to the map, though the surface seemed recently graded. The trees pressed in close on both sides, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the stars. After about 10 minutes, I started feeling uneasy. The road kept winding deeper into the woods, with no indication of where it would reconnect to the main highway. There were no signs, no mile markers, nothing to confirm I was going the right direction. I slowed down and considered turning around, but the road was too narrow for a truck my size. I'd have to find a wider section or a turnoff to maneuver. That's when I saw the car. It was pulled off to the side, a silver sedan with its hazard lights flashing. As I got closer, I could see someone standing next to it, a woman waving her arms at me. I pulled up alongside her and rolled down my window. She was in her 20s, wearing jeans and a hoodie, her face pale and frightened. "Thank God," she said. "My car died, and I've been stuck here for an hour. Do you have a phone that works?" "No signal," I told her. "What are you doing out here?" "Same as you. The detour. I was heading to Pre-Cell when they closed the highway. This road just keeps going and going. I haven't seen any other cars until you." Something about her story bothered me. If she'd been here an hour and I'd only entered the detour 10 minutes ago, that meant she'd been sent this way long before the road closure signs appeared for me. "When did you see the detour signs?" I asked. "Around 11, maybe 11:15. It was 12:30 now, and I'd passed through that same stretch of Route 11 around 11:45 without seeing any signs." "Are you sure about the time?" I said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I came through there 45 minutes ago and the road was open." She stared at me. "That doesn't make sense." The signs were definitely there. The cones, everything. We looked at each other in the dim glow of my headlights. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. That something was very wrong. "Get in," I told her. "I'll drive us both out of here. We can call for a tow truck when we get back to civilization." She hesitated, glancing back at her car. "What about my stuff?" "Leave it. We need to get moving." She nodded and climbed into my passenger seat. As we pulled away from her car, I noticed something in my side mirror. There were fresh scratches on her driver's side door, long and deep, like someone had dragged something sharp across it. "What happened to your door?" I asked. She didn't look back. "I don't know. It was like that when I came back from checking the trunk." "Came back from where? You said you'd been standing by the car." "I meant—" She paused. I walked up the road a bit, trying to find a signal. When I got back, the door was scratched. I didn't like the way her story kept shifting, but I focused on the road ahead. We drove in silence for another 15 minutes. The forest getting denser, the road getting narrower. I was starting to wonder if this detour actually led anywhere. Then my headlights caught something ahead. A vehicle blocking the road. It was a white van parked sideways across both lanes, completely blocking passage. No lights, no hazards, just sitting there in the darkness. I stopped about 50 feet away, my high beams illuminating the van. I couldn't see anyone inside. "What is this?" the woman whispered. "I don't know. Stay here." I grabbed my flashlight and climbed down from the cab, approaching the van carefully. As I got closer, I could see the side door was open, hanging loose. I shined my light inside. The van was empty, except for some rope on the floor and what looked like a tarp. But there was something else, a smell that made my stomach turn, chemical and sweet, like cleaning products mixed with something organic. I backed away quickly and returned to my truck. The woman was watching me with wide eyes. "We need to turn around," I said. "Right now. There's no room to turn around. Then I'm backing up until we find space." I threw the truck into reverse and started backing down the narrow road using my mirrors and backup camera. It was slow and difficult, and every second felt like an eternity. The woman kept looking back at the van, her hands gripping the door handle. After about a quarter mile, I found a spot where the road widened slightly. Someone's driveway maybe, or a logging access point. I managed to turn the truck around, my trailer swinging wide into the brush. That's when I heard it. A vehicle engine coming from behind us. I looked in my mirror and saw headlights approaching fast. It was the white van. "Go!" the woman screamed. I accelerated as hard as I could, but a fully loaded lumber truck doesn't exactly move quickly. The van closed the distance in seconds, pulling right up behind us, its headlights filling my mirrors with blinding light. Then it rammed us. The impact wasn't hard enough to cause serious damage, but it made the whole truck shudder. I gripped the wheel tighter and pushed the accelerator to the floor. The van rammed us again, harder this time. "Point, why are they doing this?" I shouted. The woman didn't answer. When I glanced at her, she was crying, her whole body shaking. The van pulled alongside us, trying to force us off the road. I could see the driver now, a man in a ski mask. He was gesturing at us, pointing toward the shoulder, telling us to stop. I saw the turnoff for Route 11 ahead, the main highway finally visible through the trees. Point. I pushed harder, and the van fell back slightly as we reached the intersection. I didn't slow down. I took the turn fast, my trailer swaying, tires squealing. The van followed, but couldn't match my momentum. By the time I straightened out on Route 11, the van was several hundred yards behind, and I could see other vehicles ahead. Real traffic, real lights, other people. The van's headlights disappeared, turning off somewhere behind us. It was gone. I drove straight to the nearest town and pulled into a 24-hour truck stop. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely put the truck in park. The woman was still crying, her face buried in her hands. "We need to call the police," I said. "No," she said quickly. "No police. Someone just tried to run us off the road. We have to report it." "You don't understand." She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my blood run cold. "That's my ex-boyfriend. He's been following me for weeks. If we call the police, he'll know where I am. He'll find me." "Then you definitely need to call the police. Get a restraining order. Press charges." "It won't matter. He's connected. He knows people. The last time I tried to report him, 2 cops showed up at my door the next day and told me to drop it. I didn't know what to say. We sat there in the truck stop parking lot as other drivers came and went, living their normal lives, oblivious to what we'd just been through. "I'm going to get a coffee," I finally said. "You should come inside. It's not safe out here alone. I'll be right there. I just need a minute." I left her in the truck and walked into the building. The fluorescent lights and the smell of coffee and fried food felt surreal after the darkness of that detour road. I ordered 2 coffees and stood at the counter, trying to process everything. When I came back outside 10 minutes later, she was gone. My passenger door was hanging open, and the seat was empty. I looked around the parking lot. but I didn't see her anywhere. Her car was still back on that detour road, and she had no phone, no way to call for help. I asked the clerk inside if he'd seen a woman in a hoodie. He said no one had come in except me. I called the police and told them everything. They took my statement, but seemed skeptical. When they went to investigate the detour road, they found no white van, no silver sedan, no orange cones or signs. The road I described didn't match any county road on their maps. They did find one thing though. About 5 miles down that road, they found a wallet lying in the middle of the pavement. It had no ID, no credit cards, just a photo of a young woman in a hoodie. It was her. On the back of the photo, someone had written in red ink, "Number 7. The police told me there had been 6 missing persons cases in northern Maine over the past 2 years. All women. All last seen on rural roads late at night. None of them were ever found. I think about her every day. About the scratches on her car door. About how she didn't want to call the police. About how she disappeared from my truck in less than 10 minutes. And I think about that photo with number 7 written on it. Last week, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, there was just breathing on the other end, and then a woman's voice. Barely a whisper. "He's making me call the next one." The line went dead. I haven't driven through Maine since. And before you leave, I want to thank you for being here. If you're still listening, it means you chose to stay. And that matters more than you know. This channel hasn't been in the best place lately. Views are down. The algorithm is quiet. And sometimes it feels like these stories are being sent into empty space. Like driving alone on a highway at night, with no lights behind you, no signs ahead. But I keep making these videos anyway. I keep writing, editing, and building these stories because I believe in them. I believe there are people out there who need something calm to listen to at night. Something unsettling but comforting. Something that keeps them company when the road feels long or the night feels a little too quiet. If you're one of those people, thank you. Truly, every view, every comment, every person who listens until the end helps this channel survive. It tells the algorithm that these stories matter. But more importantly, it tells me that I'm not doing this alone. I spend a lot of time trying to get the atmosphere right, the pacing, the sound, the silence between words. I want these videos to feel like a companion on a long drive, like a voice in the dark when there's nothing but road ahead of you. If you enjoy these night drive and highway horror stories, I'd really appreciate it if you considered subscribing or leaving a comment. Even a few words make a difference, especially right now. And if you've ever experienced something strange, unsettling, or unforgettable while driving at night, feel free to share it below. I read every single comment, and many of these stories come from people just like you. Thank you for supporting this channel during a difficult time. Thank you for listening. Wherever you are right now, whether you're driving, lying in bed, or just letting the night pass, I hope these stories kept you company. Drive safe, keep your eyes on the road, and I'll see you again in the next story.